Today we're going to look at the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. We'll look at it in terms of what it does in the normal person who is calm and relaxed, and what it does in cases of trauma when the very same system operates for a very different reason, usually in the face of overwhelming and inescapable trauma. We'll talk about how to biohack it if that's necessary. Hi. In this video, I want to talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, actually in two ways. Most people think of the parasympathetic nervous system as being the rest and digest system. In other words, the system that runs your gastrointestinal system to allow you to digest your food and have everything pass through in the way it's supposed to. It also regulates your heart, slowing it, calming it, and is the system that we think of as being our calming nervous system. In trauma, that's not always the case, however. The trauma response that uses the parasympathetic nervous system often involves shutdown. It could involve freezing, fainting, all sorts of things that really are used to allow the body to essentially shut down its metabolism in a way that allows for survival, and you'll see how this works. Listen and see if you understand how this works, and how maybe if this is something that you experience, you can use ways to biohack it or overcome that system when it comes to you when you least expect it, or at least need to have it. Thanks. So, the parasympathetic nervous system is part of the autonomic nervous system. It generally opposes the sympathetic nervous system, although not in all cases. It is normally your rest and digest system, or your calm and rested state. In trauma, however, it can represent a collapsed state, and you'll see why in a minute. Sometimes collapse needs to be biohacked in order to get out of this state. Of course, if you're in the rest and digest system, you don't need to get out of it. But if you're in collapse, sometimes you really need to get out of it. So, the parasympathetic nervous system is unique. There are 4 brain centers for the vagus nerve, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. There's the dorsal vagal nucleus, the ventral vagal nucleus, and 2 others. Essentially, they operate the vagus nerve, which is the main parasympathetic nervous system nerve in the body. It runs the heart and most of the GI tract. So in a sense, it's the same nerve with 4 different input centers that enter into what the vagus nerve does, but for very different reasons. Because of its large size and the vast amount of parts of your body that it goes to and affects, the vagus nerve is very important to the parasympathetic nervous system response. There's a dorsal vagus nerve that goes to the gut, the nucleus ambiguus that goes to the heart, the solitary nucleus that goes to the gut, and the spinal trigeminal nucleus that goes to the ear and throat. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. And you'll see when we talk about dorsal, we mean toward the back of the heart or toward the right of that picture, and ventral is toward the left side of that picture. So all of these functions of the parasympathetic nervous system come from those nuclei in the brainstem. They're largely something that's involuntary and unconscious, although it's greatly affected by your experience, your emotions, and your environment. The normal parasympathetic nervous system responses are to constrict your pupils, to allow you to salivate, which is good for digestion. It slows your heart rate and is the main thing that does slow your heart rate. It can cause wheezing from bronchial constriction, especially in cases of trauma. It improves digestive activity and allows the gallbladder to contract and allows for urination to happen. It relaxes the rectum for bowel movements, so So you can see how it all affects all aspects of digestion and the GI tract. In terms of the sexual response, it allows blood flow to the genitals so that you can have sexual arousal. So why do we have this dorsal vagal activity anyway? Why do we have the dorsal vagal nucleus in the brainstem? Actually, it's an old evolutionary response left over from reptiles and other animals that tend to have collapse as part of a safety mechanism in extreme stress or trauma. Think of the turtle. It goes into its shell, it collapses. Think of a gazelle who's trapped by a lion. It collapses. This allows for slowing of the metabolism when this is needed in cases of inescapable trauma, and in fact improves the chances of survival during this type of inescapable threat situation. What I want you to know is that over time in evolution, you have never lost that dorsal vagal response. So for people who've had trauma, this very same response might have saved you too. So this is what happens when the dorsal vagal nucleus gets activated in response to a prolonged stressor. There is input from the dorsal vagal nucleus into your vagus nerve. And rather than feeling calm and relaxed, you feel sluggish and you feel as though you're beginning to shut down. As this progresses, you get dissociation, collapse, and shutdown. So I think that some people are more parasympathetic dominant, either from birth or genetics, or that's just the way they are. They're more likely to experience this response to trauma. So these are some symptoms you might see if you are parasympathetic dominant. Sweating easily, cramps in the toes or legs, morning muscle stiffness, stomach cramps or gurgling, indigestion, hoarseness, rapid digestion, a generally slow or irregular pulse, swallowing problems, cold sensitivity, being prone to lightheadedness or extreme hunger, having constipation or diarrhea, and being predisposed to colds, asthma, or bronchitis, and having a poor gag reflex. If, on the other hand, you are sympathetic dominant, it doesn't mean you won't have collapse, but it just means you're more likely to have a sympathetic response to trauma, or just to stress in general. You might be sensitive to light or noise, have stiff neck or shoulders, vivid dreams, poor sleep, migraines, other kinds of headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, anxiety, again, constipation or diarrhea, high blood pressure, blood clotting issues, inflammation in your body and gallbladder problems. You might have thyroid problems or some kind of hormonal imbalances. Rather than a slow heartbeat, you have a rapid heartbeat. You're prone to allergies and depression. Again, it's not hard and fast, but this might be an indicator that you're more sympathetic dominant than parasympathetic dominant. I've talked about biohacking before because I really like it. Biohacking involves participating in do-it-yourself, essentially biology experiments on your body. It involves making small, incremental diet or lifestyle changes to improve your health and well-being. In trauma, you can biohack certain trauma responses by doing things to offset what your body naturally wants to do in response to a stressor. So of course you don't want to biohack your normal rest and digest system. What I'm talking about is biohacking the collapsed state, or when the dorsal vagal activity is predominant. So if you feel collapsed, shut down, like dissociated, there are things you can do. Exercise, take a walk outside, jog, do yoga, tai chi, jumping jacks. Move your body to activate your sympathetic nervous system, which offsets that collapsed or dissociative state. Talk to someone you care about. This person-to-person connection to someone you love and care about will again switch you into a ventral vagal state. Find something fun to do. Watch a comedy. Do a fun hobby. Activate your brain and your mind. Breathe with slow inhales and faster exhales. This tends to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is what you want. In other words, you breathe in slowly and then exhale. Just blow it out and it activates your sympathetic nervous system. Listen or sing to upbeat songs. Hum, that sometimes works. Stand and open your arms out wide. Take deep cleansing breaths and just feel your aliveness, which really counteracts that feeling of deadness or collapse that happens with dissociation. So, there's basically two inputs into the vagus nerve, the ventrovagal versus the dorsal vagal. When the ventral vagal system is activated, you feel safe connection to others. In the dorsal activation is an inescapable fear response. The ventral vagal system is a true rest and digest situation. When the dorsal vagal system is activated, you're too shut down to perceive any type of safety. In the ventral system, that's the modern human response. The dorsal system is an old evolutionary stress response that you still have. So there's actually two parts to managing a shutdown parasympathetic response. One of them is to shift your dorsal vagal response into a ventral vagal state of mind. In other words, shift from that old state to the new state where you do feel rested, calm, and attached to other people. When you biohack it, you can actually do that by connecting with other people and really feeling that kind of sense of safety. If you can't do that, activate your sympathetic nervous system just to get yourself out of that shutdown state. So try it sometime. Activate yourself, get out of that shutdown state, feel more alive and more energized. You can do that by activating your sympathetic nervous system and getting just energized, or through connection. Because the ventral vagal nervous system is a lot about connection, feeling safety, and feeling like, yes, it's okay and everything's all right. It's not something that's really common to feel in trauma, but as you learn to experience it, you realize that, yes, that's the way the parasympathetic nervous system works in humans when they haven't had trauma. Thanks for watching my video. I hope some of these tips help. Like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more about how this works. I'll be talking a lot about things like breathing, exercise, and more about the trauma response in general. So, have a good day. Rest, relax, be well, and be good to yourself. Bye.